Alright, hello and welcome back to another in my series of Dynasty videos. This one's going to be a fairly simple one. It just felt like this would translate better to video than it would to text, so we're going to try this out again. We're going to be featuring a team of mine that is, I've featured here before, both during the draft. I kind of did a draft walkthrough for it. I featured it in an article series on going all in during the playoffs. And I've covered it a few times since, including in my depth charts and team overview, off-season team review kind of the videos. But this is going to be a bit of an intersection between redraft and dynasty, because you know, dynasty is all about team building and about building a strong roster. But ultimately, you need to have a good starting roster. You need to have a good starting lineup. You need to have a team that could compete in a redraft setting, and actually probably needs to be able to compete a little large, in the deeper than a redraft setting. If you consider the fact that, in a 12-team league, 12-team dynasty league, you may have two or three teams that are generally non-competitive in any given season, and then you'll have, to kind of make up for that, you'll have 8 to 10 teams that are a little stronger than average, and you could have even two or three teams that are much stronger than average. So it's very important to have a good grasp on what you can expect in your in your pursuits of a championship. But we're going to start here with ADP. Redraft ADP, very important. It's redraft, not dynasty. Dynasty ADP is going to inflate things like youth that are very, very important for team building. But in terms of getting an accurate handle on what you can expect for a given season, you need to be focusing on redraft resources here. It's a very, very easy way. I've seen in the sub a lot of questions, things like, "Here's my team. Can I compete this year?" Or "Here's my team. Here's my startup draft. What can I expect in year one? Should I compete now? Should I trade for a running back?" Like things like that, where you need to be able to look at it from a redraft lens, and so here's my attempt to kind of demonstrate that. So before we jump into the ADP though, we're going to start with this. This is my depth chart. I'm going to go ahead and block that out we'll cover that later. This is my team, same format as before. It's a very strong team. It was a playoff team last year. It had the highest points per game by a slim margin. There are two other teams that are definite competitors alongside, and then another couple of teams that are definitely playoff teams, and then it's a bit of a mismatch after that. Same format as last time though. I got valuations here. These are my own valuations. It's basically, you can think of it as, this is the price I would need to be getting for these players before I'm willing to move off of them. Some of it's a little more up to date than others. I tried to get this kind of, trying to be accurate with it for my own taste. Like a guy like Malcolm Mitchell, for example, here you're probably not going to be able to trade him for a late first round pick. Brashad Perriman, same thing. Getting a late first for him is probably a little bit optimistic. Or, certainly is a little optimistic. But I like them. If someone wanted to acquire them from me, it would take that kind of valuation before I'm willing to move off of them. So you just kind of go through, list all your players, break them down by position, figure out what it would take for you to move a particular player. And the most important thing here is to get just a cascading list of values here. So it doesn't really matter, if Dante Moncrief and Josh Gordon, Devontae Parker, I could put them as mid-firsts, any three of them as mid first versus high first, and it's really not going to be that big of a deal. You basically just want to get an idea who, top to bottom, what you got. The big reason of doing that, the big benefit of doing that, is that you can then go and easily look at who's on your cut list, where you have strength, weaknesses on your roster. I could probably say, Zach Zenner, late third, I don't know if I could get that for him ever. I would maybe even take a fourth round pick for him. So in reality, maybe he should be in this category. Jared Abbrederis could probably be in this category. And then I have an idea, I have one free roster spot. I got two guys that are easy to cut, and I've got two guys that I could cut if I really need to. So with these free agents here, which I've hidden because I don't want my my league mates, if any of them are watching, I don't want them to know who I'm targeting with waivers. But I can start putting waiver claims in, and basically going from bottom to top. Pick up a guy, putting claims, dropping Green, dropping Wilson, etc. So that's the first step. Things like date of birth and age, that's completely, if you got time, go ahead and do it. It's kind of cool to be able to see at a glance, how old your team is. This team is under 25 years of age on average, so it's a very, very young team, but that's extra. So then what you do is you find an ADP that you trust. I'm using MFL ADP. You don't need the exact ADP. This is not a case study in how to draft a perfect MFL 10. This is not anything more than just you want to get an idea how strong your team is, because some people see this and they see, oh, that's awesome, that's a great team. Other people, if you're new to Dynasty, you may need a little bit of an extra indicator that what you're working with is either yes, it is competitive, or no, it's not competitive. So here's what I like to do. You go to you just Google MFL ADP, or you just go to this URL. I think you can find it through the MFL website. You go to top 200, any position. It doesn't matter. I filter out a little bit of noise by going up to 20%. You can probably just leave it as is, do whatever you want with that. It really shouldn't matter that much. 12 teams in the league. It's PPR. I'm going with redraft and doing real draft to filter out the mock drafts. And we'll just do recent drafts. I think this is going to be since August 15th. It might be since August 1st, either way. And there you go. You got ADP. Not too much noise here. There's a little bit, but it's really not going to make that big a difference when you got a sample size of 700. So you go through and you see, okay, let's check back QBs. QBs now. You see, oh, Marcus Mariota, he's the QB 15. Kirk Cousins is the QB 14. So you put them each in here, and you can say by that, if you ended up with a redraft team where you drafted those two as your QB platoon, you'd feel okay about it. You wouldn't think, oh, QB is a position of strength on my team, but you wouldn't think, oh my goodness, I'm behind. I've got a weakness there. I need to address it. And you do the same with each position here. Running back, you can see I have a very strong RB1 who is the RB2. And then I got a platoon of RB2s that are, maybe a little weak, a little bit. I may be struggling here, but between three of them, I think I can come up with a second one any given week that'll, at least put up RB2 numbers or high RB3 numbers. And then I got some roster sludge. Dion Lewis, I was hoping he'd beat an RB1 for me this year. I don't think that's going to be a thing. Even if he comes back, he may just be an RB2 or RB3 if he comes back well at all. I got some uncertainty with Carlos here. This late second is probably not accurate right now. I don't even know if you can get a third rounder for him right now, but you may be able to. But he's basically redraft irrelevant. Do the same for tight ends. I got a back end tight end 1 and 2 tight end 2, so I could probably cobble together back end tight end 1 production, mid tight end 1 production if I'm lucky. And with wide receiver, this looks sweet. Got a couple of wide receiver 1s, maybe 3 wide receiver 1s. At the very least, I could be able to find 4 of these guys in any given week from this crew. There's 6 of them here that could be wide receiver 1s or wide receiver 2s in redraft, and maybe even 7 of them here. And then I got some prospects here and some cut list guys. So you see that and you think, well, that's pretty reasonable. It looks like a strong team, but again, depending on how new you are to Dynasty, that may not be enough. So there's one more step that you can take. I'm going to unhide this from before. And just out of the top 200, which is a pretty, for me that extends about 15 rounds. Here's my team. This is, if I were to draft a team in a redraft team, and I were to use these players, this is about the amount of capital I'd have to invest in it. So 3 first-round picks right off the bat. You see this team is getting at least 1, if not 2 first-round picks more than it should be. You got, instead of a 4th-round pick, it's a 3rd. Instead of a 5th-round pick, it's a 4th. Instead of a 6th and a 7th, and an 8th and a 9th, and a 10th and an 11th, you're getting a 5, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9. So basically every single round from top to bottom, all the way through 13 rounds, I've picked up basically an extra round in each of these. So instead of a 4th, it's a 3rd. Instead of a 5th, it's a 4th. 6th, a 5th. 7th, an 8th, it's 2 7s. 7, 9, it's an 8, etc. And you can kind of start to see that this team is looking more like a strong 10-team league team rather than a strong 12-team league team. If you end up this within a redraft league, you would be the favorite to win your league. At least you would be, among all your teams, you would have the shortest odds to win a championship. You're never going to be a favorite in a 12-team league. You can never be 50% unless you're, talking in playoff time. There is not enough, unless you're playing with literal novices, there's no way you can actually get to that point. But looking at it this way, you can see, this team is definitely ready to compete. And now, a lot of us, who've been playing Dynasty for a few years, or who've been playing Redraft for a few years, you look at this team and you say, oh, it's obvious. QB, you can punt it a little bit. Tight end, you can punt it a little bit. You got strong running backs, and you got a shit ton of strong receivers. But some of the posts in the subreddit lead me to believe that not everyone is able to do that, which is totally cool. You know, we're all in this game with a different degree of comfort with football, with fantasy football, with dynasty football, and so being able to see it in a very clear cut way, I hope would be helpful to some people. Um, but again, like I said before, you know, to be able to compete in a 12-team league, to be able to call yourself a championship competitor in a 12-team league, I think your team needs to look like a good 10-team league team, and I think this team definitely qualifies. Whereas if you're going through and instead of this, let's just put a little example here. Instead of this, you know, Johnson was a 201, 201, 3.4, you know, just like this, where you know it's a strong. I guess it can't be 5.02. You know, it's a strong team, but it's not. You know, it's a little more. This is still a really strong team. If your team is like this, for example, you go through and it looks just like this, you can say, you know, my team, you know, in the first round, I got first round pick, I got a second, I got 2/3, I got a 5, I got a 6, a 7, a couple 7s, a couple 8s, 9s, 10s. You could say your team may not be a championship competitor off the bat, but you are definitely a playoff competitor. And my distinction between the two, I consider a championship competitor to be in that top tier. The teams that will be competing for buys, if you have buys in your leagues, they are the teams that if, you know, let's say you have two teams on that level, if they're the two teams at the end of the year that are fighting for the championship in the finals, that you're like, you know, that's reasonable. Whereas a playoff team, I consider those to be, you know, teams 3 through 6 or 3 through 8 or 4 through 6, like the teams that, you know, could reasonably expect to make the playoffs, could even, you know, could win a championship, could get knocked out in the first round, but are the ones that, you know, come week 11, 12, and 13, they should be on the bubble and fighting for a playoff spot. Let's get rid of this because actual life is a lot more exciting for this team. But yeah, that's how you go about doing this. We're going to keep it a little short here. If you got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I highly recommend. I've got one of these spreadsheets for each of my teams. You don't need all the goofy colors and the age and you know the average age and all this shit. Like this is all extra. You know, this is just, you know, I find myself a little bit extra time every once in a while, and I like talking about football, and I like, you know, it's nice to look at, whatever, what the hell. But I highly recommend you have something like this for each of your teams, especially if you only have one or two dynasty teams, or you know your portfolio is relatively slim. Highly, highly recommend it because you know compare these two. You see, I'll go ahead and load up the team from from the page. You see that compared to this, you see this and it's like, oh wow, that's a lot of information, you know. And you know, so, again, some people that have been playing dynasty for a long time, you see this and you can parse it real quick. Oh, you have Hopkins, Robinson, Watkins, Parker, like that team looks sweet. But you know, if you're just looking at a roster and it's not completely obvious how strong that team is, you know, maybe give this a try, see how it works for you. Anyway, that's gonna wrap things up for me right here. Appreciate you watching. If you have any questions about the methodology or the technique or the spreadsheet, or if you've even got yourself, let's say you go through, I'm gonna ask you to go through the whole method first. List everything. See if you have a strong team. See if you can determine whether you've got a strong team. If you still cannot figure it out, if you've gone through this from start to finish, everything I've done just here, and you still cannot tell, you know, I'm not sure, is this a strong team or not? You know, maybe it's one where, you know, like that other example here where you had like this. Post it. I'm happy to give you a hand. Do the legwork, and it makes it a lot easier for someone to go and tell you, yeah, this is good, no, this is not good, or here's what you're doing incorrect, etc. Um, yeah, happy to help. This subreddit's great, so let's keep up the quality. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good season.